Hello, my friends. Welcome once again to Kardec Radio and Spiritism, a closer look. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we are here. So, wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We don't have the barriers of time anymore, apparently, correct? So, welcome to our program tonight. Very special program. Very special program. I'm bringing a very special guest, and tonight's guest is Carol Correa. Here she is. Carol, how are you?
Good, Luis. Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks so much for participating with us. Thanks for accepting our invitation. And I think what the topic that we decided tonight, at least for me, it sounds very, very, very interesting, which is about Helen Keller.
Mhm.
We could call her an advocate for hope because I think personally, I think that's what it is. So I think there's a lot for all of us, not only spiritists, but to anyone to learn a lot from her story. We're going to discuss a little bit. We're going to bring some elements here, and not only herself, but those around her. I think it's incredible what she was able to accomplish and overcoming absolutely everything. Right? You agree with that?
Right. She is a living beacon of hope. And we say she is because, as a spirit, she is as immortal as all of us. So she's still shining and inspiring us to date. We are positive about that. And when she was last incarnated as Helen Keller, was a force of nature in that lifetime. Because though her physical body had several levels of physical limitations, she was impeded to physically see, impeded to physically hear, and impeded to physically speak. So one may think, well, she was destined to live a quote unquote useless life because she was locked in darkness, quite literally. However, she didn't let the odds of the circumstances in the 19th century define her. She was determined to literally and figuratively find her own voice and voice messages of hope that traveled throughout the centuries, quite literally. And so when she was about 7 or 8 years old, she was granted the opportunity to encounter another very strong spirit, Anne Sullivan, who also had similar limitations, but yet was a teacher. And using a method whereby Helen could touch objects and then learn to spell what they meant by hand, she made an association between touch and spelling and was able to uncover a new world. And from that day on, she never stopped. So much so, right, Louise, that she was the first person with her physical limitations to graduate from Harvard at
Oh
the
wow!
time and earn a bachelor's degree. And she became a published author. She learned how to write fluently, both using a typewriter and a braille machine. She became a public speaker, and she did learn how to speak, though that seemed impossible. We learned that she visited 35 countries throughout her lifetime, advocating for others, and she dedicated her life to becoming a representative of hope, not only for herself, but for everyone, telling everyone that limitations are not meant to limit us. Rather, they are stepping stones to lead us to greater growth. And she absolutely lived by that motto: progress always.
Yeah, her story is incredible, and I like the fact that you mentioned that this all happened in the late 1800s, and I mean, like you said, we knew nothing about medicine the extent that we know today. There were no physical or surgical interventions at the time, nothing like this. So, just to add a little bit to the story, I think when she was 19 months old, she contracted what at the time was an unknown illness. Nobody knew what that was, and that one thing led to the other. Things were, the body was just reacting in a way that we didn't know because it was not something that medicine knew about at the time.
Mhm.
So, at 19 months old, she became deaf and blind. And I want to put a parenthesis here. The American Sign Language, which is used by the deaf, uh, it came to be about, I think, 1835. That's when it really started to be more used and more, I would say, known among the deaf. But think about this. What is the American Sign Language? It depends on signs. So with your hands, you keep doing signs, and that's how deaf people know, well, there's a thing here. For you to understand that, you have to be able to see. You have to have your eyes on the person who is doing all the movements to be able to understand what they're saying. Helen Keller had did not have her eyes. I mean, he was blind. So she was blind, so she couldn't use the greatest tool at the time for deaf people, which was ASL, American Sign Language. She couldn't use that. So
Exactly.
she had to do some work around, and people around her had to come come up with ideas to circumvent the situation. And again, like Carol said, this is late 1800s. There's no technology. There's nothing like, all you have is braille that you can put your finger on, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So the limitations, when we think about, when you put this in context and you put this into the time that it took place, it becomes a lot more of an Everest than what it is in our days. So that makes, I think, her story, her whole life, even more incredible, and such an example to all of us. And that's what I think when I, put myself in her shoes. Something that we cannot fully do, but try to, and incredible, just incredible.
Exactly, exactly. And she was determined to learn how to speak. And for her, as you said, this was even more of an Everest because she was not able to hear or see, so she had no way through which she could encode the sounds that her brain was receiving, not
Mhm.
like we do every day. And at times we even take that for granted. For us, you and I, Luis, this is such an automatic process that we don't even think about it.
Right.
But for her, as you said, this was a Mount Everest. But she hiked it with much determination because she used the Tacoma method to learn how to speak. How? She would put one of her fingers here and then the other one here, and she would feel the vibrations of the person's throat and then the movement of lips, and then she would um, attempt to imitate that, learning by imitation, just like children do, but having to take all these extra steps that you and I don't even think about. And using the same method I learned watching a documentary done with her, she also learned how to dance because she could feel the vibrations of music with her hands. And by putting her hands, for example, close to the piano, she learned the rhythm of the classical music. And by putting her hands on actual ballet dancers, she could feel the movement of their legs and and arms. And in that way, she learned a little bit of choreography, how to dance as well. So, what is most impressive, one of the many things that is most impressive about her, is that whatever she set her mind to do, she did. And as Leon Denis mentioned in the book, The Problems of Life and Destiny, this is a sign of the great spirit that she is, that she brought with her memories from past lives, acquisitions from past lives, virtues from past lives. And in that life, though her body was seemingly limited, all those virtues and acquisitions flourished, showing to us that we ourselves have all that we need to achieve our reincarnatory goals.
And all of this that she achieved, it's not that she just getting by. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it. She really became this I would say activist for social
Exactly.
equality. For the deaf, for the blind. Incredible. She really took on the situation and made the best of it.
Yes.
Not only for her, she made the best of the situation for others. That's even more incredible. She
That
wasn't the
is.
first in line on her priorities. She was not.
She
Everybody
was.
else was first in line as a
Yes.
priority.
And I saw that with my own very eyes, Louise, when I watched real life footage of her in a documentary published by PBS. And then I watched two documentaries with live footage from her. And it showed that in the morning, every morning, she would receive hundreds of letters from people asking her for support. And she would wake up at 5 in the morning every day to have time to read at least a few of the 100 letters. And she would then personally make an effort to travel to other people who had similar limitations as she did, to teach them, to encourage them, to be an advocate for them.
Yeah,
So
it's
she dedicated her life to others. You are absolutely right.
all right. And she a whole life, and she died. She was 87, I think she was. So it's
Right.
not that it was a short life in terms of number of years incarnated. That's what I mean,
Exactly.
especially for the time.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those 87, probably 80 of them were devoted fully to others, to doing, first she had to prepare herself for that mission. And, uh, the way I see it, she wasn't born deaf and blind. She became
Mm-hmm.
deaf and blind.
Mm-hmm.
That's where probably God is in, right?
Exactly.
That's the providence. It had to be this way for her to be able to do what she did, and came in as a mission. That's how
Yeah.
I see it.
Yes.
Also, her teacher Annie Sullivan, it's also a mission. But so these two are, you know, life changing things for us. But I think there's a lot of divine providence in there to make it happen in such a way that you would conduct her life the way it was conducted. So yeah.
And and you're right, Louise. She is and was a missionary spirit in that life, and she embraced this mission. One, because she never pitied herself. Two, because she never allowed the circumstances to stop her. And three, because whenever she was able to accomplish a victory, to overcome a barrier, she would immediately reach out to others and share her knowledge, teach what she knew to others. This is why she became a public speaker. And this is why she became a member of numerous institutions that offered support for other individuals in similar situations as her.
Yes.
And she visited schools that trained people who could not physically speak or hear or see, to encourage them, to say, I did it, you can do it. I am no different from you. You have all the tools that you need, and I am here to support you. So she became not only a public speaker, but a motivational speaker, an educator, an activist,
She
an
spoke several
advocate.
languages as well.
Yes, she spoke 5 languages according to Leon Denis. Leon Denis was so impressed by her that in the book, The Problems of Life and Destiny, he spends 2 pages of chapter 21 addressing her case and saying that nothing stopped her. She studied algebra, physics, astrology, everything in order to share with others.
Yeah, and
Incredible.
you and I were talking before we went live today or tonight, and you mentioned something that I think it needs to be placed here, so I'm going to say it.
Please.
For us, when we look at that story, it tells us, of course, there's a lot to learn about overcoming obstacles. So for her, nothing of those were obstacles. For us, a toothache might put us down for a week, and
Right.
that's where we think it's our Mount Everest, and
Mm-hmm.
no, but still that tells us, or that shows us, the difference in spiritual maturity between the average human being incarnated here and somebody like her. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Like this is nothing for her. We'll just keep
Nothing.
going. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if I don't see, if I can't speak, if I can hear. We'll just go with the flow and make it happen. Incredible.
And most definitely, she is a Christ conscious spirit, because faithful to our guidance models, proposal, and exemplification, she was very courageous and on her own life for her own right, and at the same time she made it a habit to reach out to others. So for her, reaching out to others was literally second nature.
It was. It was her entire life was about serving others, or
Exactly.
making it happen for others.
And this is how she found joy of living. In the documentary that we watched, everyone who spoke, who knew her personally, said that she was a hymn of joy, a walking hymn of joy. Through Spiritism, we know why. Because it is in giving that we receive. And she was more concerned about giving of herself than about receiving. So she was able to be an example of living joy despite the circumstances.
Right.
So if we ourselves are feeling downcast, if we ourselves are feeling that life is against us, let us allow Helen Keller's example to help us shift, because once we are willing to come out of our shell and think of others more than we think of ourselves, then we will find joy. Joy is not in receiving, joy is in giving. And
Giving.
because of her physical limitations, she could have sat on a throne. Forgive me for saying this, but she could have sat on a throne and said, poor me, I can't do much. So you other people better help me.
Yeah,
Please come to me. Please help me. Look at me. She could have chosen to have a completely self centered life. It would have
yeah,
been socially acceptable for her at that time to have a self centered life and to have people serving her given her physical conditions. But she chose the opposite path. She chose to give of herself. And this is what is incredible about her.
Yeah, and for those who want to know about Helen Keller more, she wrote a book. But by the way, I think it's worth saying that
Yes.
she wrote this book while she was still a student at Harvard. She had not completed her degree yet, and
Mm-hmm.
she started writing her memories, and it became, she became a published author with this book. It's called The Story of My Life,
Mm-hmm.
and she tells everything. She tells all her experiences and all her difficulties, how she was able to, with joy and hope. That's the most important thing. With joy and hope,
Mm-hmm.
overcome everything. Because if we leave joy and hope out of problems, it's more difficult to overcome if we ever do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we call her this advocate for hope. And actually, the book, when she published the book, it became such an important, let's just put it this way, piece of information for the average human being. That
Mm-hmm.
the book became, it started selling, of course, because people wanted to know who is this girl who is able to do all of this.
Mm-hmm.
From the get go, 19-month old, she becomes deaf and blind. So the book was taken into Hollywood and became a movie. The name of the movie is The Miracle Worker. So you're listening to us right now. If you never heard about the book, if you never heard about the movie, yeah, go see the movie. The movie is from 1962. She died in 1968,
Mm-hmm.
so she was still alive at the time the movie came out. So it has her go ahead and do it because that's what it is exactly. It wasn't something done, on her back or nothing like this. So I really encourage you to see the movie again. The movie from 1962. There was a remake in 1979,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a third remake in 2000, sponsored by Disney. It's the same story, but three different timetables. And I think the original 1962 is very interesting. The two actresses won the Oscars for that because their participation in the movie, their roles in the movie is just absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that adds to the story, which is already this incredible story. But the performance of these two ladies as actresses adds a lot more. So we really encourage you to go ahead and look at the movie and see the movie. And
And
it's all about yeah. Go ahead.
it gives us a boost of hope to see her story coming to life. So it's a immunization against desperation, against sadness, against hopelessness, to see her story coming to life, knowing that it is a true account, that this odyssey of overcoming is possible for each and every one of us.
Yeah, I
That
think
though her story is very unique, this is a
yeah,
message of hope from God to all of us.
it is. I think when you know the story or watch the movie, whatever, it makes us rethink our spiritual posture, uh, facing life and its challenges. There will be challenges, of course. So, small little things, for some people, they become this Mount Everest. For other people, like Helen Keller, you can make her blind and deaf, still no obstacle. So I think her story, and especially the movie, because it's visual, you see things
Mhm.
happening, and it's very well made and very uh, uh, centered on what her mission was for in this life, in her life. So, and I think it makes us think. It's one of those movies that you watch it and you take it to your pillow every night for at least 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Rethinking your situation. Oh my God, I complain about this little tiny little thing here.
Mhm.
Ah, my God, it's so challenging.
Yes.
It's challenging in a good way. It's
Mhm.
challenging. It's thrilling that we are being challenged to that level. So,
It makes us get out of our comfort zone
oh
and
yeah,
give up on any sort of pity party. There's
right?
no room for self-pity once we become acquainted with Helen Keller. And another reason she is such a Christ conscious spirit is because,
Mhm.
like Emmanuel proposes in the book Thought and Life by Chico Xavier, through the psychography of Chico Xavier, on chapter 10, entitled Understanding, Emmanuel proposes that if we want to free ourselves from the shackles of our past, we shall visualize the good, seek the good, feel the good, and mold the good with all the resources that we have at hand. And Helen Keller, to us, Luiz, is a living example of a spirit that embraced this Christ conscious proposal of seeking the good voluntarily. She made a choice. This is what is so important because all of us, as incarnate and discarnate spirits, have free will. So she chose to direct her free will. She made that inner choice of constantly seeking for the positive in her life. And
Right.
she had socially acceptable excuses, quote unquote, to do the opposite. So
Right.
she was truly brave because she embraced the goodness in herself, the divine potentialities in her. And she kept reminding everyone else through her living examples, you are divine, you are good, you are beautiful, you are a child of God, you can do this. And in giving of herself, she enlightened the life of many.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you brought that she brings out so we all can see this divine potential that we all have inside to overcome that kind of thing, especially again in the 1800s or early 1900s when you know nothing is like it is today. So, you know, personally, sometimes I watch one of these Western movies or a movie from the 1800s,
Yes, of
and you look
course.
at that, it's still a movie, but you look at that and you see, how come these people were or could live under these conditions? You know,
Mhm.
they couldn't take a shower anytime they wanted. There's a lot of trouble. There's a lot of things that you have to do for the most simple tasks in the day.
Mhm.
Cooking is a problem, is a challenge, you know, washing dishes. And then I say, how could these people live 100 years ago or so,
Exactly.
right? Or
Mhm.
150 years ago.
Mhm.
And then I always question that to myself. But, you know, when you look at Helen Keller with no medical conditions and to do everything she did, you know, it puts my thinking of the cowboys way ahead, out of line because it's too little to think about them not being able to, you know, to have a good life. How
Right.
how could she? Incredible, just absolutely incredible. So I like what you brought about this divine potential, and I think there's a like a maybe like a something that we can end with,
Of course.
which love always wins. Always, love always wins, and we see this every day. Every day we see this. And if love always wins, there's hope. And I think
Exactly.
that's what she was trying to show us. There is hope because everything is going to be right. Everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be better always. This is our best life,
Exactly.
regardless of what we did in the past life. This is our best. That was her best life. We are in our best life ever. So
Mhm.
there is hope because I was worse than I am today. I was, you know, I had more challenges to overcome,
Mhm.
which little by little we do life after life, and we're all here living our best lives.
Yes.
So I
And
think,
because she was willing to share, like you said, Louise, she dissolved barriers because she united with others. And in unity, there is strength. So much so that our master could have done everything he did and more by himself. But he chose 12 disciples. Then he chose the 500 of Galilee. And now he chooses all of us because he knows that in unity there is strength. And as love continues to multiply, everyone, quote unquote, wins. And Helen Keller lived by this motto. By loving more, she knew she would have more joy, more hope, more strength to overcome barriers and thus open pathways not only to herself but to others.
Yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful. So, Carol, we are talking for 30 minutes and we have to close, and I don't want to close.
Oh,
We
thank you,
could talk for
Luis.
hours and hours and hours. It's
Yes.
such a thrill to bring a subject like this. And for you following us here, live or not, if you're watching anytime, please go see the movie. It's called The Miracle Worker, or the book, Story of My Life, Helen Keller. Be prepared, though. Be prepared, because you're gonna need your emotions in place. You're gonna have to realign your emotions a little bit, because it's a strong emotional impact when you go through something like this. But I think we all should. So thanks, Carol, for your participation, for accepting our invitation, and we're gonna be here more times, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you, Luis, for this beautiful work and teamwork effort for the good. Let us hope for more good always. Thank you, Luis.
Okay, thank you. And we'll see you next time, next week, and Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Kardec Radio, Spiritism, a closer look. And tonight's program, we took a closer look at Helen Keller. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.